I really love Street Fighter. I don't play it as much as I used to. I barely honestly play it at all, but it has a special place in my heart. And today I kind of want to talk about the first time that I seriously played it and kind of the things that were going on in my life around that time and, how they maybe shaped how I eventually felt about the game. It was around May of 2016, and the town that I was living in actually had to be evacuated because there was a forest fire nearby and it was growing rapidly. And yeah, the whole town had to be evacuated. And so that resulted in me and my family staying at my aunt's in a nearby city. And so this was like, honestly, I have a lot of good memories from this time of just kind of like chilling out and like watching shows and, enjoying the time off school because I was in the ninth grade around that time. And luckily, I was able to bring my PlayStation 4 to my aunt's. So I was able to keep playing games while I was basically on a little mini vacation. And the game that I was the most into around that time was definitely Call of Duty Black Ops 3. I was really into the zombies, and so I was playing that pretty much nonstop. But also around that time, I had been watching this streamer who, I don't know if he was playing it at the time or if it was just old clips, but I had been watching a lot of his Street Fighter 5 clips. And it always looked fun. It always looked like an interesting game, but I just kind of like never really jumped on buying it. And I can't remember exactly what made me be like, okay, let's buy this game and then play some Street Fighter, or if like my friend got it and then we like game shared or something. But I ended up getting the game, and I think the first thing I did, or one of the first things I did, was just play through the story. I mean, I wasn't going to be going online. I mean, I guess I could have, kind of trial by fire sort of thing, but I was kind of more interested in sort of learning how to play first, I guess. And so I played through the story, or like the little, mini character stories the game had. And then when I wasn't doing that, I was practicing the combos, like in the challenges section, so practicing the combos with each character. I really liked the feeling of learning a combo. It may sound kind of boring, but I really enjoyed just like doing it over and over again, learning the timing, learning the little things that you have to get right in order to successfully execute the combo. And my friend would make fun of me all the time because he's like, oh man, you're in training mode so much, and it's like, you should just be playing online and stuff. And I do agree to an extent that like I was in training mode probably more than like I needed to be, but I was having fun with the game, so I didn't really see anything too wrong with it. So the character that I gravitated towards the most at the start, I'm pretty sure it was just Ryu. That's another thing my friend makes fun of me for, is choosing like the main character. I don't know. I don't choose characters based on whether they're the main character or not. I choose them based on how cool I think they are, and I just happen to think that Ryu looked pretty cool and that he was a pretty cool character. Same thing with Tekken. When I first started playing Tekken 7 was the first Tekken game I played, and I chose to play as Jin. And that wasn't because Jin was like, one of the main characters of the series. I just thought Jin looked cool, and I was like, okay, let's learn this character. I had been getting really into Street Fighter, and so a couple of my friends at the time also decided to pick the game up. And so that was really fun just to kind of have other people to play with. Fighting games are especially fun just when you're playing them with your friends, not taking them too seriously. It can be really fun in its own sort of way when you're playing super seriously, like you're both sweating super hard. But for the time, I just kind of enjoyed, playing matches with them, watching them play matches against each other, that kind of thing. And something that was completely new for me around this time was just really getting into like a games community or a gaming genres community. The fighting game community is one that is often seen as one of the strongest. So even though like, I wasn't going to like, events or meetups or anything like that, just being aware of the fact that like I was slowly starting to enter that world and get more familiar with it, it was a really cool feeling. It was fun learning about all the legends of the scene, like Daigo, Momochi. My friends and I would like make jokes about that all the time, referencing those things. Like, when one of my friends was playing as Ken, I'd be like, oh man, Momochi's out here now. I don't even know what Momochi's up to currently, but I remember he used to play Ken. I'm pretty sure. But basically, I was really enjoying the game, and I was really enjoying the community, and making clips with my friends, all that sort of stuff. But I think what I don't think about too often is how Street Fighter actually helped me probably get through a pretty rough time. And it wasn't the evacuation, it was actually a breakup that I experienced. This was also during the evacuation, but basically while I was still at my aunt's place, I honestly don't even remember exactly how it went down. It's strange because I remember like how traumatic it was. It sounds funny, you know, talking about like a high school relationship. It was a long distance relationship too, and like, oh, it was traumatic. But you know, when you're that age and you know you've invested so much of yourself into something, you know, you don't really have a lot of other responsibilities, so like your relationship is like, that's like your life, so it's like everything you've put, that like that's on the line there. But regardless, what had happened was I felt that we were kind of starting to drift apart. I didn't really know how to like properly express my feelings, or like, you know, express them in a way that was like appropriate, you could say. That makes it sound like way worse than, you know, the actual situation was. I'm not gonna get too into it, but like, it's nothing terrible. You know, I didn't get the vibe that this was like, you know, my girlfriend. Sometimes it maybe even felt like I was like doing her a disservice by texting her, and it was like a chore for her to respond to me. She had said that she had wanted to go on a break. And so, you know, hearing about this, I was like, it basically felt like the same as a breakup, at least initially, because, you know, she had said that like, you know, let's just see where we're at in like a month's time, and then, yeah, you know, we'll see from there. But in hindsight, and I'm not saying like this is the situation for, you know, every time somebody's like, let's go on a break instead of like a clean breakup, because a lot of people say let's go on a break and not do a clean breakup because they don't want to like hurt their feelings too much. And yeah, I don't believe that's the case every single time, but I feel like it probably was the case here. This is like what one of my friends is telling me. You know, I told him the situation, and he was like, dude, when people say they want to go on a break, they're just trying to let you down easy. But I was like, no, man, like, what are you talking about? Like, she said she just wanted to go on a break. She would have just broken up with me if that was the case. And he was like, okay. And so I basically was still hopeful and like positive around this time. And I was like, pretty much, she said a month. So it's pretty much waiting. Okay, in a month we're gonna get back together and it's gonna be grand. And, you know, you could probably guess what happened at the end of that month. You know, I was still playing Street Fighter, I was still playing zombies around this time. So luckily I had like distractions to kind of take my mind off of the situation. But you know, a month goes by. She basically is like, yeah, I don't want to be with you anymore. I don't think she said it as like, you know, blunt or harsh as that, but you know, that was the sentiment. And so this was pretty like, you know, when you're a teenager and it's your first, it was my first relationship. You know, it's a pretty devastating thing to hear, you know, especially like the kind of person I was around that time. I would say I was definitely like more clingy, more like really into the idea of being in a relationship. So something like this definitely threw me for a loop in a pretty bad way. But you know, moral of the story, kind of down in the dumps after something like this. And I didn't really think about it, but having Street Fighter, having my friends to play the games with, having this community that I felt a part of, I think it really helped me get through that time. Again, I know it's kind of funny talking about like, you know, a long distance relationship and, you know, being, you know, I think I was probably around 15 at the time. But those things, when you're that age, have a big impact on you. And games like Street Fighter, luckily, can also have a really big impact, positive impact on your life. And that's why I feel like I never really realized it before, but that is likely a big part of why it has such a special place in my heart. I'll always have a soft spot for Street Fighter V. I never got too seriously into it. My friend and I went to Canada Cup. That was, I mean, kind of like the highlight of my fighting game career, even though I didn't even play Street Fighter at that tournament. I just played Tekken. I'll probably make a video talking about how Tekken kind of impacted my life, maybe kind of compare it to how Street Fighter did. But Street Fighter will always be my very first fighting game that I had taken seriously, because when I was really young, I played, it was like Ultra Street Fighter 4 for like the 3DS. And so it's technically not my first fighting game, but it's the first one that I really felt the connection to. And so that's why I consider it, you know, my true first fighting game. So yeah, that's kind of the story of how I discovered Street Fighter and what it means to me. And a very special shout out to my current girlfriend slash future wife. Kind of weird to say current girlfriend, but it makes sense in the context of the story. But yeah, you're the best. I'll put another video up here in case you want to watch some more. And thank you for watching.